resources do you think exist to help aid the immigration process for an immigrant coming to America?
Outside of like coyotes and stuff. Aside from seriously, you need somebody who knows someone else. What's helpful is if you have a skill or trade that's necessary here, computer, technology, biochemistry, whatever. Outsourcing is what we do to have immigrants come into our country invitingly on this thing they call a visa, which is also a credit card, which is really sketchy. So that what sources are available, like for the person who wants to pull themselves up with a traditional kind of American dream, there are very few. There are very few outside of like sheer determination. You have to want to really get and be here. So why else would somebody climb a fence or let their child come and catch up with them 3 years later or sneak across through a tunnel or some other? I mean, that's crazy stuff that people go through to come. So, not a whole lot of sources to help them, or they'd be going after those sources, right? Mm-hmm. I think so.
All right. So would you say that like those are the same barriers and obstacles that they face trying to come to this country?
They're the exact ones, and that's why they come up with somewhat we would call it illegal, which is another word I just cannot stand. But they find illegal measures to do it because they don't have these as help. They're all barricades.
Okay. So other than physical obstacles, do you see any emotional obstacles that they face that they're constantly facing?
Of course. I mean, just leaving your own homeland, leaving what's familiar to you, leaving your culture, leaving the food. Oh, good gosh. Because when I moved here from California, from New York, I just missed the food and the atmosphere of the people. That's a lot to sacrifice in order to gain something potentially in the future. Because everyone who comes here, I mean, we hear all sorts of great stories. It doesn't mean you're going to make it. So, mentally, I don't know how you make the decision to literally leave everything behind. How many people in America are just leaving everything? And I'm moving to, this very new place where they be in a culture. Not very many people do it, so.
So, on that note, kind of like, how do you think that these immigrants like learn about American laws?
Generally with an interaction with a cop. Unfortunately, they're taught through TV. Like, you can learn a lot from TV. I'm sure there's a lot of Law and Order that they watch, scenarios, and immigration is no secret, for sure. They know how to avoid la migra. They know how to avoid the immigration lawyers and other people who are coming after them because of their status, quote unquote.
So you think that it's kind of hard, especially coming here illegally, to kind of learn about these laws, aside from like TV and internet?
I think that absolutely, because there tends to be, if you come here illegally, there tends to be a complete and absolute avoidance of law enforcement altogether. Mm-hmm. And so that's the last person you would want to interact with. Even if you're in trouble, you can't necessarily lean on an officer to help you out in the long run because you know that you'll be deported potentially.
Okay. So is there anything that you personally would change in the American systems on helping immigrants?
Yes, but without being too, overzealous and not, I don't want to be too hyphy about the changes. It just shouldn't take 10 years to gain citizenship. Mm-hmm. Certainly. I think that's a clear sign the system is broken. The one thing I would like to do is not streamline it. I think that if you are going to be an immigrant in its purest sense, which means you have come to a place completely undocumented. If you have some documentation, you've had to talk to an official. But if you come here with no visa, no ID, no nothing, and then you think that it's okay for you to drive a car, there's people who are going to say no. I have an issue with the lack of ability to identify a person. I'll give you a case scenario. I'm a citizen, born here. Hey, not really my choice. My parents just popped me out on American soil. Yeah. So I'm born here. I would have a hard time if someone killed my mom and there was no way to trace that person. Mm-hmm. They never had an ID. They have never had a registration, a social security number. There was never a picture and an actual name that was, that's what makes it difficult. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes where you immigrate from they don't keep those records. So I think that we need to start having this identity establishment for those who we cannot identify. That's one major issue. For people who want to blatantly lie about their identity, and we can find out later that they are actually of this and this, and this is their real identity or their background initially, even if I come to you, I'm Gustavo Jenkins, okay? Then later you arrest me and I'm Raphael Cummings. And you're like, what the hell? There has to be a harsh law for that false identification. Because of what would stop a person from me immigrating here I say, oh, I'm Michael Smith, which is a very generic name. I love it. Like, that's my full name. It's so generic. But, oh, yeah, I'm Michael Smith. Then all of a sudden, Kwame Jones. Like, I'm Kwame Jones. So I murder, and it's like, dude, that was Kwame Jones that did that. But I'm Michael Smith. You see, so it's problematic with just identification. I would want us to I would want to meet with a group of people to kind of brainstorm what is the best way that we can get people in this country registered so they can vote and do all those other things that we like to do in a democratic society. There's a lot of issues. One of the issues is we have to get to a point where people are not killing themselves in order to get here. I have a hard time with the number of people who come from Mexico and die in the desert. They never make it. They don't have water. So one of the things that Border Patrol will put out water, along the way, which seems counterproductive. If you want people to stop doing something, why are you helping them make it across? But the idea is that it's humanity. It's not allowing that person who's trekking through the cold desert, the hot desert during the day, to die because they're in the pursuit of this American dream. So, big issue, but that's just like one little aspect.
So that's what you would want to change. So do you, aside from your changes that you want, I guess, like the system now, do you see it as easy or difficult, whether coming here legally or illegally?
Easy is such a disrespectful word, I suppose, to describe it, but it's accessible. If it weren't accessible, you wouldn't have this many immigrants here. California, immigrant numbers total anywhere from 10 to 20 million. And these numbers are absurd. You don't even know. I mean, I'm like, 10 million. How can you say that? How can you say that 10 million people have immigrated through California, not presently residing, but through California alone? It's a lot of people. That is a lot.
It's a lot.
So clearly the system's working in some way.
Okay, so then, personally, I guess last question is, what are your views on immigration and why?
Personally, I have a very obscure view that this idea that we would own a certain area. I guess it's almost like a black Native American. Native Americans didn't really believe in owning the land. It's there to be shared, and eventually that's what we do anyway. Like, we are sharing this portion of the land that you or I don't own. I own a house. I can actually control the ebb and flow of who comes onto my property, and I have certain rights and protection. But this idea that we all in some way immigrate at some time, and if we don't immigrate, all of us at some point migrate or move. We have to start thinking about how we are excluding some people and including others. And that's my personal thing. My personal thing is that I think that some immigrants who have come here, they have come here 25 years ago, 30 years ago, before any law was established. They've paid taxes, they've gotten jobs, they're American as far as I'm concerned. Sending that person back to a homeland, I'm gonna send you back to Michoacan. It's like, whoa, pause. That whole deportation, leaving the family split up, we gotta come up with something better than that. So I'm more concerned with personally, I'm more concerned with looking at what are the long-term effects of immigration. Right now in a recession, you got a lot of people immigrating back to Mexico. They're like, man, de los estados de no gracias. So let me go back to Mexico, and I'll be with my family and happy if I'm gonna be poor and have no job opportunities. So really looking at taking care of people as human beings and not treating them like numbers. And you don't speak English? Well, you don't speak proper English, so what's the big difference?
Well then, that's it. So thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Smith.
thank you. Tough questions, miss.